When the man in the black Lamborghini arrived in our village and offered to buy chai for everyone in the tea house, nobody recognized who he was. But I knew him. I recognized that boy with bare feet from 20 years ago. And I knew this return would change everything forever. My name is Kwame. I live in a small village in Ghana, where the red earth meets the endless sky, where the baobab trees have watched over our families for generations. My father is one of the tribal elders. My mother is a traditional healer who knows the secrets of ancient herbs. I thought I had a normal life, until that day came. It was that afternoon. The burning African sun blazed overhead, and I was sitting under the great baobab tree in the village square with my old friends. We were playing dominoes on a wooden crate, telling stories of the mischief we used to make as children, laughing at memories that felt both distant and close. The air smelled of dust and cooking fires. Children ran between the mud brick houses, their laughter echoing off the walls. Women balanced water jugs on their heads, moving with that graceful rhythm I'd known all my life. This was home. This was peace. But then, I heard something strange. An engine sound. But this wasn't the familiar rumble of old trucks that sometimes pass through our village. This was something completely different. Something that didn't belong. "Something's coming," said Kofi, squinting his eyes and looking toward the dirt road. His weathered hands paused over the dominoes. "Who could it be?" asked Amma, our friend who sold cola nuts by the roadside. "No car like that ever comes to our village." And then we saw it, a black Lamborghini, sleek, powerful, completely out of place, moving slowly through clouds of red dust on our village's dirt road, like a panther stalking through tall grass. Everyone's mouth fell open. In our village, electricity comes and goes like the seasons. Our most luxurious vehicle was the village chief's old Toyota pickup, and even that only ran half the time. And now, this. The car stopped. The engine died. For a moment, there was only silence and settling dust. The door opened with a soft click. The man who stepped out, elegant tailored suit, shining leather shoes, gold watch catching the sunlight. His face carried a gentle smile. But his eyes held something I couldn't quite place. Something familiar and yet distant. "Greetings," he said in perfect Twi, our local language, but with a refined accent that spoke of education and travel. "My name is Michael." Villagers began gathering like iron filings drawn to a magnet. Children ran from their games to touch the car, their small hands leaving smudges on the pristine black paint. The elderly watched with suspicion mixed with curiosity. Young men tried to look casual while studying every detail of the machine. "Who are you?" asked Nana Yor, our village chief, stepping forward with the authority of his 70 years. "I am from this village," Michael said simply. "Now I have returned." But nobody remembered him. The silence stretched like a held breath. "What do you do?" asked Auntie Efua, the woman who knew everyone's business and wasn't afraid to ask the questions others only whispered. "I am a businessman," he replied. "I live in London." London. The word hung in the air like smoke from a distant fire. Most people in our village had never been further than the regional capital. London might as well have been on the moon. And then he made that gesture. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick bundle of bills. Crisp, clean money. More money than most of us had ever seen in one place. "I want to buy chai for everyone," he announced to the crowd. The village froze. No one spoke. Even the children stopped their chatter. The only sound was the wind rustling the leaves of the baobab tree. In this village, chai tea was a luxury. Most people ate one meal a day if they were fortunate. Many families went to bed hungry more often than full. And this man, this stranger, was offering to buy tea for the entire village. Truly? Asked old Fatu, the woman who sold tea from a small wooden stall by the market. Her voice trembled with disbelief. Of course, Michael said, and his smile never wavered. But I noticed something in his eyes, a sadness that seemed to run deeper than any ocean people approached hesitantly, like animals approaching an unfamiliar water source. Who was this man? What did he want? Where did this money come from? And most importantly, what would it cost them? But I knew him. I recognized those facial features, worn by 20 years but still fundamentally the same. I knew the depth of those eyes, had looked into them countless times as a child 20 years ago. He had been the barefoot boy. But I didn't want to tell anyone yet. Because if this was really him, there were much more complicated sides to this story. Sides that might break hearts or change everything we thought we knew about escape, success, and coming home. While Michael distributed the chai, I watched him carefully, every movement, every word, every glance. The way he held his hands, the slight tilt of his head when he listened, the unconscious way he touched the scar on his left thumb, a scar I remembered from our childhood, and I realized he was watching me too. Our eyes met across the crowd. In that moment, we both knew. Kwame, he said quietly, his voice carrying across the space between us like a secret. Are you Kwame? Yes, I said, and my voice shook despite my efforts to control it. Do you remember me? He asked, and now I could hear the vulnerability beneath the confidence. How could I forget? 20 years ago, you were the poorest child in the village. You went to school barefoot, your clothes patched and repatched until more thread than original fabric held them together. Your mother had died when you were 7. Your father drowned his sorrows in palm wine until the palm wine drowned him too. Your grandmother, Akofa, tried to raise you on her own, her ancient hands doing their best to fill the void left by so much loss. And then one day, you disappeared, like smoke in the wind, like a dream upon waking. One morning your grandmother found your sleeping mat empty, and you were simply gone. I remember, I said. But how is this possible? He smiled, but it was a smile touched with old pain. Long story. I have time, I said. Around us, people were sipping their chai, examining the car, whispering among themselves about this mysterious visitor. But Michael and I, we existed in a different world now, a world of shared memories and unspoken questions. Do you remember that night? He asked, his voice dropping even lower. The last night, before I ran away. Of course I remembered. How could I forget the night that split our childhood in two? 20 years ago. You were 12, I was 14. That night your grandmother, Akofa, had also died. A stroke took her in her sleep, leaving her with just enough time to call your name once before the ancestors claimed her. Now you truly had no one. Social services would come from the capital to take you to an orphanage in the city, where children disappeared into a system that swallowed them like quicksand. I'm going to run away, you had told me that night. We sat under this same baobab tree, the stars above us bearing witness to your desperate plan. If I stay here, I'll die. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But slowly, piece by piece, I'm going to go out there and build myself a life. Where will you go? I had asked, my 14-year-old mind unable to imagine life beyond our village boundaries. I don't know, you had said, and your voice held a determination that frightened me. But somehow, I'm going to become rich, and someday I'll come back and surprise everyone. I had laughed at you then, not cruelly, but with the disbelief of someone who couldn't see beyond the immediate reality. You, the poorest child in the village, how could you possibly become rich? But now, here you stood, with a Lamborghini. Tell me, I said, what happened after that night? Michael looked around at the villagers, still enjoying their unexpected chai. Children still clustering around his car like bees around honey. This isn't the right place, he said. Tomorrow morning, come to our old spot, under the baobab tree where we used to dream. Our old spot. The great tree beyond the village where we had spent countless hours as children, planning futures that seemed impossible then and somehow inevitable. Now, all right, I said. And Kwame? Yes? Don't tell anyone yet. They'll hear this story. But at the right time, in the right way. That night, sleep eluded me like water through cupped hands. My mind churned with questions and possibilities. Was this man really Michael? If so, how had he achieved this transformation? And more importantly, why had he come back? I thought about the boy I had known. Michael had been kind-hearted, gentle, despite his circumstances. He shared his meagre lunch when others had forgotten theirs. He helped elderly villagers carry water without being asked. He had never hurt anyone, never taken what wasn't freely given. What had 20 years in the world done to that boy? Before dawn, I rose from my sleeping mat. The African morning air was cool and sweet, filled with the songs of birds greeting the sun. I walked through our village streets, past the familiar sights of my entire life, toward the ancient baobab tree that had been our sanctuary. Michael was already there. He sat with his back against the massive trunk, looking out across the savannah that stretched toward the horizon. He had changed from his expensive suit into simple clothes, jeans and a cotton shirt that made him look more like the boy I remembered. You came, he said when he saw me approaching. I promised, I replied. I sat beside him, just as we had 20 years before. The tree's presence was comforting, like being held in the arms of time itself. Tell me, I said. He took a deep breath, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of years and experiences I could barely imagine. That night I left the village, he began. I had nothing. No money, no food, no plan beyond the desperate need to survive. I just started walking. Walking where? Away, just away. I followed the road that leads to Kumasi, then beyond. I walked for days. Sometimes I caught rides on trucks when the drivers took pity on a skinny boy with desperate eyes. Most of the time, I walked. I tried to imagine it. A 12-year-old boy, alone on roads that stretched through landscapes he had never seen, heading toward a future he couldn't envision. How did you eat? His expression darkened. I did things I'm not proud of, Kwame. When you're starving, when you're that desperate, you make choices you never thought you'd make. What kind of choices? I stole, I lied. I learned to manipulate people's sympathy. I became someone I didn't recognize. This hit me like a physical blow. Michael, the kind boy who wouldn't hurt a fly, had been forced to become someone else entirely. I'm sorry, I said, because I didn't know what else to say. Don't be. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't anyone's fault except circumstances, life. What happened next? I made it to Accra first, the capital city. Have you ever been there? I shook my head. The furthest I had ever travelled was to the regional market town. It's like another world, buildings that touch the sky, cars everywhere, people moving like ants in all directions. And noise, constant noise. I had never heard anything like it. What did you do there? I lived on the streets, slept in doorways, ate from garbage bins, learned the hard lessons that the city teaches to children who have no protection. My heart ached thinking of my childhood friend enduring such horrors. But I was smart, Kwame, and I was determined. I learned English by listening to people. I learned how money worked by watching business. And slowly, I started to form a plan. What kind of plan? To get to Europe. I had heard stories from other street children about opportunities there, about places where someone like me might have a chance. How did you get there? That's the hardest part of the story. He fell silent for a long moment, and I could see him wrestling with memories that still caused him pain. I don't want to lie to you, Kwame. I want to tell you everything, even the parts that make me ashamed. I'm listening. I got involved with people who smuggled things. And people. They promised to get me to Europe in exchange for carrying packages I wasn't supposed to ask about. My stomach dropped. What kind of packages? I never knew for certain, but I wasn't stupid, and I wasn't innocent anymore. Oh, Michael, I told myself I had no choice. Maybe that was true. Maybe it was just what I told myself to sleep at night. But eventually, I found myself on a boat in the Mediterranean Sea, packed with other desperate people, all of us betting our lives on the chance for something better. That's so dangerous. Yes, many boats don't make it. Many people die. We were lucky, if you can call it that. We made it to the coast of Spain, and from there I managed to get to London. Alone? Alone, 15 years old, unable to speak English properly, with no papers, no identity, no legal right to be anywhere. How did you survive? The same way I had survived in Accra streets, shelters, whatever work I could find that didn't require documentation. Construction sites where they paid cash and didn't ask questions, cleaning buildings at night when no one was watching. I tried to imagine the boy I had known navigating this alien world, and it broke my heart. But I kept studying, Kwame. Every free moment I learned English. I learned about business. I watched how successful people behaved, how they spoke, how they moved through the world. That must have been incredibly difficult. It was. There were nights when I wanted to give up. Nights when I thought about just disappearing. But I kept remembering what I had promised myself under this very tree. What promise? That I would come back someday. That I would prove to myself and to this village that the poor boy with bare feet could become something more. And then? Then everything changed because of one moment, one choice that redirected my entire life. What choice? I tried to pickpocket an old man. The words hung between us like a confession. He was well-dressed, clearly wealthy. He was walking alone on a London street at night. I thought it would be easy. What happened? His name was James Morrison. He was 73 years old, and he had a weak heart. When I grabbed for his wallet, the shock of it triggered a cardiac event. A heart attack. Yes, right there on the street. He collapsed, clutching his chest, struggling to breathe. What did you do? Michael's voice became very quiet. I had a choice to make in that moment. I could run away, take his wallet and disappear into the London night like I had never been there. Or I could try to save the life of the man I had just tried to rob. Which did you choose? I called for help. I stayed with him until the ambulance came. I rode with him to the hospital and sat in the waiting room all night, even though I had no reason to be there. Why? Because he struggled to find the words. Because in that moment, looking at this old man dying on the street because of what I had tried to do, I remembered who I used to be. I remembered the boy who helped elderly villagers carry water without being asked. What happened when he recovered? 3 days later, When he was stable, he asked to see me. The nurses told him there was a young African man who had been asking about his condition. What did he say to you? He asked me why I had stayed, why I had helped him after trying to rob him. What did you tell him? The truth, all of it. I told him about Ghana, about losing my family, about the streets, about the desperation that had made me into someone I didn't want to be. How did he react? He cried. This proper English gentleman, lying in his hospital bed, cried for a street kid from Ghana who had tried to steal from him. And then, he asked me if I wanted a different life. Just like that. Just like that. He said he had been successful in business, but he had never had children of his own. His wife had died years before. He was lonely, and maybe God had brought us together for a reason. What kind of reason? He offered to help me, to give me a job, a place to live, a chance to become legal in the UK in exchange. In exchange for what? Nothing. That was the amazing part. He asked for nothing except that I promised to use whatever opportunities he gave me to become the best version of myself. That's incredible. James Morrison became the father I never had. He taught me about business, about integrity, about how to move through the world with dignity. He paid for my education, helped me get proper documentation, introduced me to people who could help my career. And you lived with him? For 5 years, the happiest 5 years of my life up to that point. He taught me about wine and literature and classical music. He showed me how to wear a proper suit, how to shake hands with confidence, how to look people in the eye and speak with authority. It sounds like he loved you. He did, and I loved him. He saved my life. Not just that night on the street, but every day after. What happened to him? Michael's voice broke slightly. Cancer. It took him quickly, which was a mercy. Before he died, he made me promise 2 things. What things? First, that I would use his money wisely to build something meaningful. And second, yes, that I would never forget where I came from. That I would never let success make me forget the boy with bare feet who sat under a baobab tree and dreamed of a different life. Did he leave you money? Everything, his entire estate. Morrison Construction Company, his properties, his investments, millions of pounds. I could barely comprehend it. This was beyond anything I had imagined. So you became actually rich. Incredibly rich. Overnight, I went from being an immigrant street kid to being the owner of one of London's most successful construction companies. That must have been overwhelming. It was. At first, I thought I was dreaming. I kept waiting to wake up back on the streets. But it was real, and I had to learn how to live with that responsibility. And you've been successful. Very. The company has grown tremendously. We build offices and residential complexes all over Europe. I live in a mansion in Chelsea. I drive expensive cars. I travel the world. That's everything you dreamed of. You would think so, wouldn't you? Something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. But you're not happy. No, Kwame, I'm not happy at all. I don't understand. You have everything anyone could want. Do I? I have money, yes. I have success, yes. But what else do I have? What do you mean? I mean, who am I? Really? In London, I'm Michael Morrison, successful businessman. People respect me, but they don't know me. They see the suit and the car and the address, but they have no idea who I am underneath all of that. But you know who you are. Sometimes I forget. Sometimes I look in the mirror and I don't recognize the person looking back. I speak differently now. I move differently. I think differently. Am I still the boy who sat under this tree with you? Or have I become someone else entirely? You're still you, I said, though I wasn't entirely certain. Am I? When was the last time I felt truly connected to another human being? When was the last time someone cared about me for who I am rather than what I have? Surely you have friends in London. Business associates, people who are interested in what I can do for them. But friends? Real friends? People who knew me before I had money. People who would still care about me if I lost everything tomorrow. I began to understand. You're lonely. Profoundly lonely. I have everything I thought I wanted, and I've never felt more empty in my life. Is that why you came back? Partly James, before he died, he told me something I've never forgotten. What? He said, Michael, money is a tool, not a destination. Success is meaningless unless it serves something larger than yourself, and you'll never be truly happy until you reconnect with your roots. Your roots, this village, these people, the boy I used to be, the connections that shaped me before the world changed me. But Michael, you're so different now. People here might not accept you. I know. That's the risk. Maybe I've been gone too long. Maybe I've changed too much. Maybe the bridge between who I was and who I've become can't be rebuilt. What will you do if they reject you? Then, at least I'll know. At least I'll have tried to come home. We sat in silence for a while, watching the sun climb higher over the savannah birds called from the acacia trees, and in the distance I could hear the sounds of our village waking up. Children's voices, the bleating of goats, the rhythmic pounding of women preparing grain for the day's meals. Michael, I finally said. Yes? I believe you, and I want to help. Thank you. That means more to me than you know. But I have conditions. What conditions? When you tell this story to the village, you have to tell all of it. The good parts and the difficult parts, the success and the compromises. People here respect honesty above everything else. I understand. And if they don't accept you, if they decide you've changed too much, you have to respect that decision, even if it breaks my heart. Even then, he nodded slowly, agreed. We shook hands, just as we had done as children when making important promises. That afternoon, word spread through the village like wildfire. The mysterious rich man wanted to address everyone. He had a story to tell. By evening, the entire village had gathered in the square under the great baobab tree. Elders sat on wooden stools that had been in their families for generations. Mothers held babies while older children played at their feet. Young men and women stood in groups, whispering among themselves about what this stranger might want to tell them. Michael stood before them, but he had changed again. Gone was the expensive suit. Instead, he wore simple local clothes, traditional kente cloth and sandals. He looked more like one of us, but there was still something about his posture, his manner of speaking, that marked him as someone who had travelled far from home. My brothers and sisters, he began in Twi, his voice carrying clearly across the gathered crowd. I want to tell you a story. It's a true story about a boy who was born in this village, grew up under this very tree, and then disappeared into the world. The crowd settled into attentive silence. Even the youngest children seemed to sense the importance of this moment. This boy's name was Michael. His mother died when he was 7. His father drank palm wine until the palm wine killed him. His grandmother, a Kofa, tried to raise him, but she was old and tired and had little to give. Some of the elders exchanged glances. They were beginning to remember. This boy went to school with bare feet because there was no money for shoes. He wore clothes that had been mended so many times they were more thread than cloth. At night, he went to bed hungry more often than full. I remember a boy like that, said one elderly woman. But that was long ago. Yes, said Michael, 20 years ago. And when his grandmother died, this boy faced a choice: stay in the village and likely die slowly of poverty and neglect, or run away and try to build a life somewhere else. What did he choose? Asked a young man. He ran away. One night, he simply disappeared. Nobody knew where he went or what happened to him. Why are you telling us this story? Asked the village chief. Michael looked directly at him. Because I am that boy. The silence that followed was so complete, it seemed to echo. You? Someone said. Yes, I am Michael, son of Kwaku, who died of drink, grandson of a Kofa, who raised me until she couldn't anymore. People began murmuring among themselves. Could this be true? Could this wealthy stranger be their own lost child? But that's impossible, said one man. That boy was poor. You're rich. Yes, I'm rich now. But 20 years ago, I was the poorest child in this village. How do we know you're telling the truth? Asked a woman. Michael reached into his pocket and pulled out 3 items. The old photograph of our childhood group, his grandmother's bracelet, and one more thing I hadn't seen before, a small carved wooden animal that I recognized immediately. This elephant, he said, holding it up, was carved by Nana Kweku, the old woodcarver who used to sit by the market. He gave it to me when I was 8 years old, said it would bring me luck on long journeys. Nana Kweku had died 15 years ago, but several people remembered him and his carvings. And this bracelet belonged to my grandmother, a Kofa. She was wearing it when she died. I took it with me when I left, and I've carried it ever since. Old Akosua, who had been Akofa's friend, stepped forward to examine the bracelet closely. Yes, she said slowly. This was Akofa's. I helped her make it 50 years ago. But how do we know you didn't just find these things? Because, I said, stepping forward, I can vouch for him. I remember this boy. We were friends. We played together, dreamed together, planned futures that seemed impossible. People turned to look at me with surprise. Kwame, said the chief. You believe this man is who he claims to be? I do. I recognize him not just from these objects, but from the way he moves, the way he thinks. This is Michael, grandson of Akofa. But how did he become so rich? Asked another voice. Michael then told them the story he had told me that morning, about running away, about the streets of Accra and London, about James Morrison and the construction company. He spoke honestly about the mistakes he had made, the compromises he had been forced to accept, the transformation from street child to businessman. The village listened with rapt attention. This was better than any story the travelling musicians could tell. So you see, he concluded, I am both the boy who left this village 20 years ago and the man who has returned today. I am both poor and rich, both lost and found. Why did you come back? Asked the chief. Because I learned that success without connection is meaningless. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, but I've never felt more empty. I came back to remember who I am underneath all the wealth and accomplishments. What do you want from us? I want to come home. I want to be part of this community again, and I want to use some of my resources to help this village become everything it can be. What kind of help? A school with real books and supplies, a clinic with modern medicine, clean water for every family, solar panels for reliable electricity. But not just my money thrown at problems. I want to work alongside you, to earn my place here again. And in return, nothing I ask for, nothing except the chance to belong somewhere again. The village chief stood up. This was the moment of decision. Michael, he said formally, if you are truly the child of this village, if you are truly the grandson of a Kofa, then you are welcome here. Thank you. But, the chief continued, words are easy. Proving yourself is harder. If you want to be one of us again, you must live like one of us. You must work like one of us. You must show us through your actions, not your promises, that you remember how to be part of a community. I understand. Your fancy car, you must sell it. Michael nodded without hesitation. I'll sell it tomorrow. And you must build a house here like everyone else's house. Not a mansion, not a palace, a normal home. Yes. And you must work. Not manage, not supervise, work with your hands, alongside everyone else. I would be honored to. The chief looked around at the assembled villagers. What do you say? Do we give our lost son a chance to come home? There was discussion, debate, some argument. But in the end, the decision was unanimous. Michael could stay. The next morning, he kept his word. He drove the Lamborghini to the city and sold it, using the money to purchase a solar generator powerful enough to bring reliable electricity to the entire village. When he returned, he came in a simple truck loaded with basic construction materials. Where will you build your house? Asked the chief. Michael pointed to a small plot of land near the village centre. There, close enough to be part of the community, but not so prominent as to set myself apart. That's good land. Then I'll build a good house on it, nothing fancy, but strong and honest. Construction began immediately, and true to his word, Michael worked alongside everyone else. He dug foundations, mixed cement, carried water. His hands, soft from years of office work, quickly developed blisters and calluses. His skin, pale from London's grey skies, darkened under the African sun. The first week was brutally hard for him. I watched him struggle with physical labour that the rest of us had been doing all our lives. But he never complained, never asked for special treatment, never suggested that perhaps he should just hire others to do the work. This is harder than running a construction company, he told me one evening as we sat exhausted under the baobab tree. How so? When you're the boss, you make decisions, and other people implement them. But this, actually building something with your own hands, it's completely different. Are you sorry you came back? No, never. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm doing something real. What do you mean? In London, I moved money around. I made deals. I attended meetings. But at the end of the day, I wasn't sure what I had actually accomplished. Here, at the end of the day, I can see a wall that didn't exist in the morning. I can touch something I built with my own hands. Over the following weeks, something beautiful happened. Not just to Michael, but to the entire village. Having him there, seeing his commitment to the community, inspired everyone. People worked harder, cooperated better, dreamed bigger. The school he had promised began to take shape. Not just a building, but a real school with books, computers, and teachers who could offer children opportunities that had never existed before. The clinic followed. A nurse from the city agreed to staff it 3 days a week. Basic medicines became available. Women no longer had to walk hours to get medical care for their children. But the most important change was in Michael himself. Each day of physical labour, each evening spent talking with neighbours, each morning that began with the same sunrise that had risen over his childhood. All of it was slowly restoring something in him that had been lost. I had forgotten, he told me one evening, what it felt like to be known. Known? In London, people know my reputation, my bank account, my business achievements. But here, people know my stories, my family, my history. They remember the boy I was before I became anything else. Is that important? It's everything. It's the difference between being respected and being loved. 6 months after his return, Michael's house was complete. It was simple, but beautiful. Built in the traditional style, but with modern touches like solar panels and indoor plumbing. The night we helped him move in, the whole village came for a celebration. As we sat around a fire that night, sharing food and stories and laughter, I watched Michael's face in the flickering light. The tension that had marked his features when he first arrived was gone. The sadness in his eyes had been replaced by something I could only call peace. "Are you happy now?" I asked him during a quiet moment. "Yes," he said without hesitation. "For the first time since I was a child, I'm truly happy." "No regrets? About coming back?" "None. About the years in between? Some. I wish I could have found a way to achieve success without losing myself in the process. But you found your way back." "I did. And I learned something important." "What's that?" "That home isn't a place you leave behind when you grow up. Home is a place you carry with you, and a place you can always return to if you're brave enough to remember who you really are." Later that night, after the celebration had wound down and most people had gone to their own homes, Michael and I sat alone under the baobab tree where our friendship had begun so many years before. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For believing in me, for helping me come home. You would have done the same for me. I hope so, but I'm not sure I would have had the courage. You had the courage to leave everything behind and start over. That took more courage than I've ever had to show. Different kinds of courage, maybe, but equally important." We sat in comfortable silence, two men who had somehow found their way back to the friendship of their boyhood despite 20 years and vastly different experiences. "Michael," I said eventually. "Yes?" "What do you think the boy who ran away that night would say if he could see you now?" He considered the question seriously. "I think," he said slowly, "he would be proud that I kept my promise to come back. But more than that, I think he would be relieved." Relieved? Relieved that despite everything that happened, despite all the ways the world changed me, some part of him survived. Some part of that boy who sat under this tree and dreamed of a different life. He's still here. "Yes," I said, "he is." We sat there until the stars faded and the first light of dawn began to creep across the savannah. Two friends, one story, and the understanding that sometimes the longest journeys are the ones that bring us home to ourselves. As the sun rose over our village, Michael smiled and said, "Kwame, I think that boy with bare feet finally found what he was looking for." What was that? A place to belong. And I realized that this story, our story, was really about something much bigger than money or success or even homecoming. It was about the courage to remain human in a world that constantly tries to make us into something else. It was about the power of community to heal individual wounds. It was about the truth that we can travel to the ends of the earth, but we'll never truly be at peace until we remember where we came from. So tell me, if you had to choose between all the success in the world and the love of your community, which would you choose? Write your thoughts in the comments below, because I truly want to know. And if this story touched something in you, if it reminded you of something important about home and identity and belonging, then please share it with others who might need to hear it. Because real stories, the ones that change us, are meant to be shared.